Welcome everyone to the Thursday edition of Fair Territory. I'm Ken Rosenthal here with Alana Rizzo. We are smack in the middle of both league championship series. Both teams, or both series, resume today. Game 4 of the NLCS, Game 3 of the ALCS. Alana, we've got a lot to discuss.
We do. Ken, great to be with you as always. Let's get right to it as we go to the lead. And I want to talk first about the NLCS and what Walker Buehler did yesterday. Ken, he looked exactly the way they needed him to look in that big Game 3 victory.
He did, and it's funny, in the post-game interview I did with him, Alana, he said because it was cold and windy, the ball was moving all over the place. He couldn't believe some of his metrics. He had, of course, already seen them. And I thought that was very interesting for one thing, but once he got on the mound, and obviously the Dodgers had this great trust in him, and to see him not dominating the way he once did, but really mixing up his pitches. Of course, he went to the stretch early in this game, full time. It was creative, it was imaginative, it was everything he needed to be at this point of his evolution. Remember, he's coming off his second Tommy John surgery. He's not the four-seam fastball monster he used to be. He cannot bully hitters the way he used to. But in his own way, he did last night. And yeah, it was a really impressive performance by Buehler.
4 innings of shutout baseball. That's exactly what you could hope for. And what is this that you said, Ken, that Kike Hernandez reminded you of a right-handed David Ortiz? Explain yourself, Rosenthal.
Well, I wrote this morning, Alana, in my column about Kike Hernandez and his meaning to the Dodgers. And what I was talking about was his 15 postseason home runs, his overall postseason numbers, which dwarf his regular season numbers. And I advise anyone who says, Ken, you're an idiot. This happens virtually every day. I advise anyone who says that, including maybe even some people working on our show, to go look at Kike's postseason numbers and go look at David Ortiz's postseason numbers. The amazing thing about Kike, this isn't a small sample. He's got like 220 postseason plate appearances. Ortiz had more, and he had more, of course, accomplishments. But Kike is a monster in the postseason, and we saw it again with the big home run last night to make it 4-0. We saw it in Game 5 of the DS, the winner-take-all game, in which he got the Dodgers the lead. This guy in the postseason is a different cat. He plays all over the field, and my goodness, it's really something to see. And for $4 million, he's proven quite the bargain.
Yeah, postseason Kike is a very different Kike. And you mentioned the comparison there to David Ortiz, obviously a Hall of Famer. And also, Ken, you can compare him to probably a future Hall of Famer when it comes to the postseason, because you look at Aaron Judge's plate appearances in the playoffs, 224. Kike has the exact same amount. And actually, the home runs, the RBI, and the OPS only in the postseason, not comparing the two players overall, but only in the postseason, it actually favors Kike Hernandez. So he is, no disrespect to Reggie Jackson, but today's Mr. October. Okay, let's talk about the decision that Carlos Mendoza and the Mets organization had with going with JD Martinez over Jesse Winker, Ken, in Game 3. What's your takeaway from that?
They felt that they wanted to get JD back involved. He's been a big part of their team. Obviously, he's hit right-handers and left-handers throughout his career. It wasn't going to be an issue for him. But yes, people are going to question what Mendoza should do with his lineup. They were already questioning it, media was at least, after last night's game. And he is pretty adamant that he's going to go with his right-handed lineup again tonight because Yamamoto is a reverse splits pitcher. He actually is more effective against reverse splits. I'm getting this wrong. You know what I'm saying. It's late. That's not late, but it's early here for me right now. My brain's a little fried. He's a reverse splits, guys. Righties are going to be faring better than lefties, and that's the way Mendoza is going to go about it. Iglesias is going to be in there as well. I expect Francisco Alvarez is going to be there as well. So that is where his decision-making was last night. It'll be interesting to see if that is indeed the lineup he rolls out there. But because of Yamamoto's reverse splits, he is going to, or at least his plan was, to play his right-handed hitters.
All right. Well, the Mets have done a great job all season long, especially when they got hot, of, getting back up and punching back when they've been punched. They have an opportunity to even up the series tonight in Citi Field. Let's switch our focus now from the NLCS to the ALCS, and that series switches locations back to Cleveland, but they go back to Cleveland, Ken, down 0-2, the Cleveland Guardians do. And it looks like the Yankees are doing more than just holding serve. It just seems like Cleveland's a bit overmatched in this series. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it is right now, and I would think even a Guardians fan would say that right now. Now, it goes back to Cleveland. They've got Matthew Boyd on the mound. Who knows? Maybe this can turn. The problem I have with the Guardians right now is twofold. One, their offense is simply not at the level that you would want an ALCS team to be
Hmm.
at. That was the problem the Tigers had. It was the problem the Royals had. It's the problem the Guardians had too. These are below average offenses at best, or average offenses. The other problem, in my view, is I understand why Vogt managed so aggressively in game two, pulling
Hmm.
Bybee after what 39 pitches, but you're compromising yourself perhaps for later in the series. Now I know there was an off day coming off game two, so he can empty his bullpen and feel confident. Well, now he's got 3 straight days of games, and Tom Verducci has mentioned this on the broadcast with regard to how the Dodgers have handled their bullpen. They have been careful not to expose specific relievers to the same pocket of hitters over and over again. The Guardians are going to run this risk, and they've got a great bullpen. Clase and Cade Smith, my goodness, Hunter Gaddis, Tim Herring, all these guys are terrific. But you're going to the well, in my mind, too soon and too often. So they need more out of Boyd today than what they do in game four. Probably Gavin Williams, who is another guy that has just been up and down this season. Starting pitching has been their bugaboo ever since Bieber got hurt to start the season. Tristan McKenzie, of course, had to go to the minors. You understand where they're at. You understand why he's doing this. I just wonder if there's a tax he pays with his bullpen usage as this series goes on.
Well, Alex Cobb goes in game one, Ken, and then he gets pulled relatively early. Now he's not even on the ALC roster anymore. They had to replace him with Ben Lively. And then you had, as you mentioned, Tanner Bybee gets pulled after, fewer than 40 pitches. What is the likelihood that Matthew Boyd can go deep into this game? They need him to, but from what you've seen so far, that really hasn't been their mantra all season long.
Well, what's the definition of deep this October?
Yeah, that's true too.
So
In
far,
today's
the
day and age,
Indians are
four
averaging
innings.
just they're averaging just over 3 innings per start in the postseason. Deep for them would be 5 innings, I would say, for Matthew Boyd. And that is probably realistic for him. It's tough against the Yankees lineup. They grind you down, of course, and they're really good. But that, in my mind, with 3 games and 3 days ahead of them, is almost the bare minimum of what they need. Now we'll see how they go about it, and maybe it's one game at a time, and Vogt just feels, you know what? If I can steal this one, pulling Boyd after 3 1/3, I'll do it. Okay, I get it. It just seems to me that you're running a race against time that you're not going to win.
Can I ask you a quick question before we go to break here, Ken? It almost seems like this is a mismatch, rather, between the Guardians and the Yankees. Obviously, the Mets and the Dodgers, big payroll teams as well. Is this a bad look?
That's a good question, Alana. And I will say this. I'm going to dodge it a little bit, but then I'll get back to it. What is a bad look right now is all this bullpenning. I don't
Mm,
know that this is great for the sport. We've talked all season, we've written all season about the need for the sport to restore starting pitching. I would say that's true. In the series that I'm on, and that of course you're covering closely, the NLCS, what we're seeing is the team that gets the lead in the first 4 innings is going to win the game and
mm,
kind of in a rout because the bullpens come into play and look out. The bullpens are
mhm.
good enough. At least the Mets has been so far. Now, the Cleveland New York thing, disparity in payrolls, that's certainly an issue. I don't know that it's a bad look. To me, the Cleveland Guardians had a great year. They've always been challenged with their rotation. They've had an amazing bullpen. They're just a little bit short when compared to the Yankees. Now, I know if we get to a World Series where either the Yankees, well, where the Yankees are involved with either the Mets or Dodgers, people are going to scream about payrolls again. Even though in the past several years we have not seen the highest payroll teams win.
Mhm.
So it's a fair question. I don't really know the answer to that. If I'm a Guardians fan, sure, I'm frustrated that, hey, I couldn't keep Francisco Lindor for starters. But at the same time, these teams have competed well in the past, and right now the Guardians are just a little bit short. Injuries have played a part in that. Other reasons as well. They're not a team that spends. They're a team that's had issues with their future local television revenue, like a number of clubs. It's not a fair fight. No one would pretend that it is. At the same time, that doesn't mean the Guardians could not have won this series, and it doesn't also mean that they could just play the way they've played and be
Right.
satisfied with that. They haven't played all that well.
That's exactly my point, was going to be that they need to play up to their capabilities, and they're just not playing the way that they have been in the past, a little bit more sloppy and certainly not capitalizing when they've had the opportunities. Well, it's the postseason. It's the best time of year, and Foul Territory wants you to be a part of a watch party that they are having. So take a look at this as to what we're doing. It's the postseason watch party. It's going to take place tomorrow night for ALCS Game 4. It's 8 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube. Special guests, Brent Rooker, Vinny Pasquantino are going to guest host. So we certainly hope that you will join us for that. The ALCS Game 4 watch party Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. That is live on YouTube. All right, we're going to be right back after a quick word from AJ Pierzynski, Eric Kratz, and Scott Braun on Orgain.
We're looking for real ways to boost our nutrition and just found a protein shake that actually tastes amazing. It's called Orgain, and it's been a game changer.
Orgain is the leader in real protein-powered nutrition that understands that being good for you doesn't have to taste bad. It's the organic ingredients we're looking for, but I don't want a grainy battle with my taste buds every day. You know what I'm saying? It's giving smooth milkshake vibes. That's Orgain, and they have a brand new 30-gram complete protein shake that offers protein-packed real nutrition designed to satisfy your cravings without all the sugar.
It gives me energy, provides muscle support, and helps manage hunger too. It's also made without soy ingredients and made with no artificial flavors or sweeteners.
Orgain 30-gram protein shakes are available at Orgain.com. If you want to get in on the delicious protein-packed nutrition today, head to Orgain.com/foul and use the code FOUL for 20% off your order. Once again, that's Orgain.com/foul for 20% off. And make sure you use promo code FOUL so they know FT sent you.
All right, time now to get your questions in, load them up in the chat as we grill Ken Rosenthal. And before we get to the questions in the chat, Ken, I want to ask you, because you wear so many different hats. Obviously, your insider hat is very different than your breaking news hat, is very different than your reporting hat. So what is the information gathering process like when you're doing these in-game hits and when you're preparing to do on-field reporting duties?
Wow, it's a combination of everything that I've done during the year. And I will report things that I've heard during the season, the regular season, things I've picked up, things also that I picked up during a particular series. I'll go to the workout days and search for little tidbits there. And sometimes they come in rather handy. Last night, for instance, I talked about how Jeremy Hefner, the Mets pitching coach, was frustrated with the 8 walks that they had in Game 2, frustrated with the walks in general, but realizing that the Dodgers, this is what they do. And I had picked that up at the workout the night before, just talking to him about how to go about handling the Dodgers. So it kind of comes from all places. I also will make phone calls to farm directors, agents, all kinds of people, just trying to get any tidbits I can that will be useful on air. And many times, Alana, there's a crossover. Stuff I will try to get for on air is stuff I will ultimately use in articles. An example was today, I talked about that exchange between Kike Hernandez and Jesse Winker in Game 2. And actually our stage manager, a guy named Dan Frank, picked that up. He saw that on the field, and he said, hey, what's going on with those guys? So I asked Jesse the next day, and he said, oh, no, it wasn't like me and Adames. I was just saying, hey, that was a great play, man. And it didn't make air because we didn't have video of it, but I got it into the column today. So it kind of is just a gathering process, and the stuff can appear anywhere, and that's kind of how I go about it.
One thing I have to keep reminding myself as a reporter is that we live and breathe this stuff on a daily basis. So whereas we feel like we know it inside and out, perhaps our audience doesn't. And I wanted to make sure that we don't just assume that people know what we know. So how important is it for you, Ken, to, still bring up stories that perhaps but not everybody has heard it. Not everyone's watching us all the time. Not everyone's reading us all of the time. So how much does that go into your reporting too, to make sure that, not everybody is a statistician and a baseball nerd and a baseball savant. Like some people are just the casual fan.
Well, especially this time of year, Alana. And that's really important to remember because people who watch the playoffs, you bring in a lot more casual fans. And it's folks who might live in New York right now and say, I'd like to watch the Mets or the Yankees for that matter. Folks in LA who might not be avid Dodgers fans, but are Dodgers fans this time of year. And then folks in general around the country, North America, who just like postseason baseball. My wife is one of those. She likes watching the postseason. So, yes, you have to be mindful of that. And I'm hopefully going to use a story about Yamamoto today on the broadcast tonight that came from an article that Fabian Ardia and I did in March. And it's about how the Yankees and Mets pursued him, but that the Dodgers had the home court advantage because he was living in LA. It's a cool story. If you read the article, yeah, you know it. But, I mean, how many people read the article? I like to flatter myself and think everybody read it. But it's a long time ago already. So, yes, you definitely have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, and sometimes reminders are good things. We can't always remember something that we read. I can't even remember what I did yesterday, let alone something I read several months ago. Okay, continue to get those questions in for Grill and Ken here in the chat. This is in regards to Jerry Reinsdorf, which Britt Giroli, our colleague and your colleague with The Athletic, has an article about the fact that Jerry Reinsdorf, the majority owner of the Chicago White Sox, is interested, perhaps at least entertaining the deal of selling the team. How true is this, Ken? And in your estimation, who would be legitimately a buyer? Could you buy it? Do you have enough cash?
I don't. And no disrespect, but when people ask how true is this story, Britt Giroli is one of the best reporters in baseball. If she's writing it, it's true. And the question is, how real is it, I guess? And I guess that's what Randy's asking. It's interesting. This is coming up at a time when Jerry Reinsdorf is frustrated in his attempts to get a new ballpark built in Chicago. He wants another one built in a different neighborhood. He thinks that would help the White Sox a great deal. I'm sure it would. It's a question always of who pays for it. So here he is. He's talking to a group led by Dave Stewart. And Dave Stewart has been very involved in the Nashville expansion process. So I guess if there's no new ballpark and Dave Stewart buys the team, there's the threat of the White Sox moving to Nashville. There are always these kinds of threats that come up when teams are frustrated with their present stadium situations. How real is this? Will Reinsdorf actually do it? He owns 19% of the team. I assume he's the majority stakeholder. I don't know. But at the same time, the mere fact that he is considering it, that he's open to it, that was a big break by Britt yesterday, and a really good one. And it leads to a lot of the questions like the one Randy just asked, and we'll see in the next several months how this plays out.
I'm in agreement with you. Britt Giroli is one of the best in the business. She's phenomenal at what she does. Let me ask you this, a question in regards to the Yankees. Hi, Ken and Alana. Hi, Steven. Good to see you. Do you agree with people who say the Yankees got an easy path to the World Series?
I do agree with that. I've written that. The moment the Astros went out, I wrote that this is the easiest path they've had since they went to the World Series in 2009. And that's no disrespect to the Guardians and the Royals and the Tigers, the teams that were left at that time. It's more a statement on the Astros, the Yankees' big rival and nemesis. Yes, good word. They were out. The Orioles were out. The Orioles had faded, but the Orioles had been a thorn in the Yankees' side as well. So it seemed to me at that point, because of those offenses that I mentioned, that they're weaker. Yes, this was an easy path for the Yankees, and I will maintain that. Doesn't diminish what they're accomplishing. Got to win and beat the teams in front of you, but they didn't have to beat the Astros, they didn't have to beat the Orioles, and it's a weaker American League this year.
Well, that was my point, and that's how I was going to answer Steven's question. Is I just think that the National League, by and large, is a much tougher path this year for any team than the American League is this year. I think the American League, you'd be safe to say that the Yankees were probably the favorite going in, and I think they've proven that so far this season. All right, another question here on Grill and Ken in regards to the Boston Red Sox, more specifically on Triston Casas. Ken, this is from HHSGD Football. Jade, that's a lot going on there with some letters.
Whatever.
Do you really think Triston Casas is moving this offseason?
I don't know. And the reason I say that is because I don't know how Craig Breslow, as the chief baseball officer, is going to go about this. They, at some point, are going to have to get more balance in their lineup. And maybe Casas is one way to do that. You can always find a first baseman. You can move Devers to first base specifically. And that's a move that might be necessary in time. So Casas would have value. I don't know that any first baseman has tremendous trade value, but that's going to be a question that comes up in the offseason because they've got all these kid infielders coming. And one of them can play third base. Devers can, of course, move to first. And Casas, yes, teams would like the control. They would like the power, and they are intrigued by him. So I would expect they would at least listen. There's no reason not to. Triston Casas is really good, but at the same time, they've got all these others and mostly middle infield types in the mix. and it's one way to go to get the pitching that they need.
I would love to see what Triston Casas can do over the course of an entire season. Obviously, a very special player, but was cut short as far as injuries are concerned. All right, Grilland Ken continues here. This is a question in regarding Shohei Ohtani. Juan Alaska, are people getting tired of all the Ohtani coverage? Is it too much? I don't think so, but maybe people can think of it as Ohtani being forced on people. I think that's fair.
I have heard that complaint, and I kind of snicker at it, honestly, because this is the best player we've seen. It's a remarkable individual. It's unique. It's historic. So in my mind, all the coverage that he gets is entirely warranted. And frankly, the more the better. Because even with all the coverage, we don't know that much about him. And we're probably never going to know that much about him. He is to himself. And because of the language barrier, we don't hear him talk all that much, or at least without an interpreter. And as far as what he achieves on the field, the coverage, in my mind, is entirely appropriate. Consider, last night, I talked about him pregame because of that weird stat, 0 for 19 with the bases empty going into the game, 6 for 8 with runners on base. And I said, basically, it's inevitable at some point he's going to do something. Well, boom, there it is. And he's had to face tougher pitching in the postseason. That's inevitable for all players. But what he can do, and that swing alone was just compelling. It was incredible. So I don't think there's too much coverage. I know if you're maybe a Giant fan or a Padre fan, you're sick and tired of hearing about Ohtani, but he's a singular player, and we have to cover him extensively. We'd be not doing our jobs if we didn't.
He is a generational player. And I don't know what you think about this, and maybe this is a stretch, but what Ohtani is doing right now for the game of baseball, Ken, is almost like what Fernando Valenzuela kind of meant in the 80s for Los Angeles and baseball and for Spanish-speaking players with Fernando Mania. I'm not saying they're exactly the same, but I feel like today's generation of baseball fans is kind of experiencing what that generation of baseball fans did when Fernando Mania was such a thing.
Hey, that's certainly one comparison. We can make others too, going back to Jackie. And we can look at Roberto Clemente. These guys who came into baseball and in their cases broke barriers. Ohtani's not doing that, but were compelling and intriguing for those reasons alone. And you couldn't take your eyes off them as players either. They were that good. Jackie Robinson, Roberto Clemente, Shohei Ohtani. These guys were and are just amazing to watch. And it's the beauty of the game, honestly, that we get these players once in a while. Now, we got them for the wrong reasons in the past because they were barred from playing. But now we get a player who is just athletically different than anything we've seen before.
And I don't care how much Shohei coverage we get, as long as Decoy gets the same amount of coverage, I am in for all of the Decoy Ohtani coverage. Okay, a serious question now for the folks in Tampa Bay as far as the Rays are concerned. Ryan wants to know, he's worried about the Rays and wondering about them too. I saw an article today and it seemed options were up in the air. The Trop has been severely damaged by Hurricane Milton. Of course, the roof is gone. It's not like you can just build a roof overnight. What are the options for the Rays, Ken, in terms of where they're going to play in the 2025 season?
I don't know, and I don't know that they know right now. They're kind of sorting through things, still recovering, of course, from the hurricane, being respectful of all that has gone on in that region. It's a real sticky question for them. It doesn't seem that the Trop can be repaired in time for the season to start. That's the problem. So what do? Do you play in minor league parks like in Dunedin or in Orlando where the Braves used to train? Or do you go and try to share the Marlins Stadium where there would be a big overlapping conflicts with dates? Do you go to some other city entirely? These are tough questions. And if you go to a minor league park, let's say they play in Dunedin like the Blue Jays did when COVID was going on. Well, that's two teams that will be playing in minor league parks next year. The A's, of course, and you have now the Rays. That's not a good look. I would love to see them play in Oakland. And see all the Oakland fans kind of rally around the Rays and get another team, but MLB is never going to allow that to happen. And I just don't know that there's an easy answer here, and that's probably why we haven't heard much about this yet. They're trying to figure it out, and maybe it's some kind of combination of solutions. Montreal has been mentioned. Remember, they had that split city plan with the Rays at one time. I don't know that that's viable, but all of these things are going to be discussed, I would imagine, for sure.
Why, in your estimation, would Major League Baseball never allow Oakland to do it? I know the mess with the Athletics and going to Sacramento and potentially eventually Las Vegas, but the park is there. The Oakland community could use the work. Why wouldn't Major League Baseball do it?
Because I think Major League Baseball has had it with Oakland, and I don't think Major League Baseball wants any part of Oakland. And if there was a real desire to be in Oakland, some things maybe would have been handled differently. And I know Oakland had all these problems, and MLB will cite them till you're blue in the face, as will the A's people. Okay, but there were a lot of mistakes made along the way, and a lot that could have happened that didn't happen. And I just think at this point, MLB sees it as kind of a lost market. Maybe for expansion, they revisit it, but I don't know.
All right. Yeah, that ship has sailed, it seems. Okay, time now for our Dude and Dork of the Week. This is where we have an opportunity to applaud some good deeds and also kind of scratch our head at what are these people thinking. All right, Ken, we'll start with you as always. Who is your Dude of the Week?
My Dude of the Week is Mark I Took It Personal Vientos. And we've been talking a lot about the Dodgers, and I want to give the Mets some love, and Vientos in particular. And what I love about this guy, and of course I'm talking about the intentional walk to Lindor in front of him in Game 2, and it's a subsequent grand slam. But what I love about Vientos is he's a guy his own team had kind of counted out. They sent him to the minors. They signed JD Martinez. They thought he couldn't play third base, all of this, and maybe he can't play third base. Maybe ultimately he's the replacement for Pete Alonso at first. But my favorite thing in the game, one of my favorite things, is when players prove people wrong. And sometimes it's media, sometimes it's their own teams, and sometimes it's just a perception that fosters and it gets created in the industry. Well, Vientos has done that. He is a big-time player. He's a hitter, and he's going to be a big part of that organization for years to come, and I don't know that the Mets really anticipated that, let's say, going back to spring training.
I loved when he looked over and he sees the numbers going up like this, and he kind of like raised that eyebrow like, oh, all right, okay, I see you. And again, I don't fault Dave Roberts for intentionally walking Francisco Lindor. I mean, Francisco Lindor is a beast at the plate. He's not, and Mark Vientos isn't Frankie. So I love the move, but I love Mark Vientos like, all right, I got this. Let's bring it. I'm going to make you pay for that decision. Okay, my Dude of the Week is Kike Hernandez, just because this guy takes it to another notch in the month of October. You could put a lot of people in this. You could put Walker Buehler with what he did. You could obviously put Mark Vientos as you did. Max Muncy has reached base safely in 8 straight plate appearances. Shohei Ohtani, that ball still hasn't landed at Citi Field. To me, Kike just has a confidence and a knack for the big stage that you need at this time of year. And I said it 1,000 times, Kike Hernandez always needs, I don't care if he is 0 for a billion in the regular season, Ken Rosenthal, Kike Hernandez needs to be in your lineup in the postseason. All right, time now for the John Fisher Dork of the Week.
It's going to be a fellow owner. Alana, I always get so excited to talk about the Dork of the Week. I start talking over the music. I apologize if anyone heard
That's okay.
That. My John Fisher Dork of the Week is a fellow owner. We discussed him earlier, Jerry Reinsdorf. We didn't hear anything about Jerry Reinsdorf selling the White Sox until he couldn't get a new ballpark built. And suddenly now we're hearing Jerry Reinsdorf talk about selling the White Sox through that story that Rich Giroli broke yesterday. Dork of the Week might be a little harsh, but I don't think White Sox fans would think it's harsh enough. They've seen enough of the Reinsdorf ownership over the years, and this team does need a change. There's no doubt about it. But how sincere he is about actually selling to the group led by Dave Stewart and where this actually stands and where it all goes, well, that remains to be seen. Jerry Reinsdorf, Dork of the Week.
Okay, mine is with the Gold Glove nominees, one that was nominated and one that did not receive a nomination, so that was a snub. Again, 6 coaches, and Ken, you taught me this earlier today, 6 coaches and a manager vote from each team, so that's 75% of the vote. And then the other 25% is based on a defensive metric. Well, I tell you what, this defensive metric cocktail is broken, because the fact that Juan Soto of the New York Yankees, should he get a Silver Slugger? Perhaps. But a Gold Glove? I don't know about that. I don't think that I'm thinking Juan Soto in right field for the Yankees is a Gold Glove caliber right fielder. I don't think he's that great defensively. So that's a question mark for me. And how Francisco Lindor, the shortstop of the New York Mets, did not get a nomination for Gold Glove is more surprising to me that Juan Soto actually got one. How does this man, Ken, who made a fantastic play last night, as recently as last night, how does he not get a nomination for this award?
I don't know. And you've got to give credit to the shortstops who did get nominations. They're all really good. Swanson, Tovar, and Mason Wynn. But I was baffled by it as well, and I'm equally baffled by Soto. I wrote a story very early in the season about how he's improved his defense. And it was one of those stories where as soon as I pushed the button, I thought, we'll see how this one ages. It didn't age that great. It is obviously not right that Lindor was snubbed, and I would say it's not right that Soto got his own final version here. He's a finalist. So there are flaws in all these things, of course, including the BBWA awards, but this one, can't blame on the writers.
That's right. This one is not on you, whether it's an addition or a subtraction, omission or whatever. This is not on the writers. All right. Let's give a shout out to our friends at BetMGM. We always appreciate everything that they do for us. BetMGM Sportsbook account holders who opt in to the promotion and place a straight bet of at least $10 on their choice of any MLB player to hit a home run will win a share of a daily $50,000 BetMGM bullpen jackpot if the player they wagered on hits a home run that lands in a Major League Baseball team bullpen. Prizing will be paid out in bonus bets that expire in 7 days. Gambling problem or concern? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Ken, we appreciate it. You obviously have the game tonight, Game 4, 7:30 Eastern on Fox. How will the Mets respond?
That's a good question. They're facing Yamamoto. It's not going to be easy.
All right, Ken Rosenthal, we appreciate you always on Fair Territory with Ken Rosenthal. Watch Ken tonight on the Fox broadcast, and he, of course, will be back with a new episode next week. Thanks for being here.